If you can't tell by your sub box, this is the RTX 4070 Ti. Embargo has lifted this morning. So they already had their announcement yesterday at CES. Clearly this is the morning after, and we are now gonna talk about the RTX 4070 Ti. More importantly, we're gonna check those claims. Is it truly an RTX 3090 Ti killer? And then we're gonna quickly get through those because I'm gonna get into a fairly subjective, somewhat salty bit now about graphics cards and the state of affairs.
Today's video is brought to you by the J2Sense merch store. We got t-shirts and gaming mats and mugs and all that kind of stuff. So whenever you go buy our stuff, we don't have to put other ads here and other annoying crap. So go buy our stuff.
So the RTX 4070 Ti 12 gig card is here. This is the exact same card that NVIDIA tried to sell you for $899, pegged as an RTX 4080 12 gig, that there was so much outrage over that NVIDIA actually changed the name of it to a 4070 Ti. Proof. They can call it whatever the frick they want. It's still gonna be the card that it is, okay? They did drop the price by $100 though. So clearly there was a little bit more margin in there than we expected there to be, right? Because we know there's not a huge amount of margin in graphics cards. Proof already that graphics cards could be cheaper than they are, and the greedy green machine is at it again. So in terms of the claims, in the keynote, they talked specifically about the fact that it was an RTX 3090 Ti killer. Now look, I could sit here and talk about exactly how many tensor cores it has, how many RT cores it has, how many CUDA cores it has, how much memory it has, the teraflops, and you know what? I've learned something over the years. There's plenty of channels covering that crap. Most of the time, people really do not care about any of that unless you work in a very, very specific type of industry that those teraflops translate to productivity for you. But you know what? If NVIDIA can say the 90 series cards of the past were not quote unquote gaming cards, and then launch a 4090 that is absolutely a gaming card, and a 3090 Ti as a gaming card, when they told me the 3090 wasn't a gaming card, then I can say that productivity on a 4070 Ti, this is not a productivity card. So none of that shit matters. Okay, that's what I'm gonna say with that first of all. But I'm gonna tell you right now that all of the 3090 Ti killer stuff that you guys saw, that was very cherry-picked benchmarks. It was extremely cherry-picked, also extremely cherry-picked against anything 7900 XT and XTX. So what I'm gonna show you right now are the benchmarks in our mixed use case of gaming titles. That's everything from some older engines to some brand new engines. We're gonna see exactly how the 4070 Ti 12 gig actually compares to a 3090 Ti and those that reside nearby in the price range. So on the older titles like Shadow of the Tomb Raider and stuff like that, it performs pretty well, actually. So let's go ahead and take a look at Shadow of the Tomb Raider's no ray tracing. It's 104 FPS at 4K versus 110. But as soon as we turn on ray tracing, we go from 74 FPS to 76 FPS, right, versus the 39. Now the 3090 Ti that you'll notice on our chart, that's a For the Win 3 EVGA card. That is a custom PCB, that is technically an overclocked card. It is faster than a Founders Edition would have been more than likely. However, I've never owned or had a 3090 Ti Founders Edition, and I can't compare it to that. So that's actually the only 3090 Ti card that I have and have ever had. So it's the only one I have to compare it to. I also want to point out that the TUF from Asus was actually sent by NVIDIA. NVIDIA did not send Founders Edition cards for this 4070 Ti. I think that's because they couldn't like remill the cooler from saying 4080 to 4070 Ti fast enough. There's 4 Asus cards, apparently, that were launched today. We've got the 12 gig, we've got the O12G, which is basically a $50 more expensive card. That's the one they sent us. So this MSRP is $849. We're already $50 above the $799 MSRP, which really kind of irritates me because the TUF 12 gig, not the TUF, the TUF O12 gig, whatever the O stands for, overclocked, I'm assuming, was $799. So I would have much rather taken a look at the quote unquote $799 card, not the $50 attempt to make it look that much better than either a previous 3090 Ti or even the competition, because now we're losing value, right? By adding $50 back of the $100 reduction that they did over the original price of the card, which was supposed to be $899. So there's also the Strix, and then there's the overclock Strix, which is, that in itself just is stupid. And you can go all the way up to like $1,049 on this card, which is now just, anyway. But yeah, depending on the titles, it can trade blows. If we take a look at the Cyberpunk, no ray tracing, slower. It's a 49 FPS versus 51 in 4K. Remember, no DLSS in any of our tests. We're testing raw performance. Now the 3090 Ti actually has 3,000 more CUDA cores than a 4070 Ti. Remember, the 4070 Ti is on a newer process, and it is a more efficient process. The board itself is a 285 watt board, at least in reference. The TUF model is gonna be a higher TDP than that, probably about 300 watts. So the adapter that comes with it just terminates to 2 standard 8-pin PCI Express plugs, which was actually quite hard to plug in, I wanna point out. We really had to force that in to get it all the way seated. I wonder why some people aren't plugging their cables in all the way on 4090s and melting them. Probably because of the tolerance. Anyway, 104 FPS though in 1440 versus 96 FPS in the 3090 Ti for the Win 3, and that's in Cyberpunk no ray tracing. And then it handedly beats it in 1080. 164 FPS versus 134. So what we're kind of noticing here is 4K titles really narrow the gap between a 3090 Ti and a 3090 Ti and a 4070 Ti. And the reason for that more than likely is just the memory bus bandwidth and the amount of memory. Because 4K, as you know, 12 gigabytes, depending on the title, can definitely easily be chewed up. So we found that in 4K is where the gap really gets narrow between the two. More than likely memory limitations, and then 1440p and 1080p. The card is very capable of bottlenecking various engines. I mean, we've shown that in the charts. You can go back and look through them if you're wondering why at like 1080p or even 1440 in certain titles, they're like all like right in the same number. It's because we're talking about engine limitations at that point. And the 4070 Ti in many titles, new and old, at 1440p is capable of basically hitting engine cap in many of the titles. Let's talk value here for a second. This is where it becomes extremely difficult. Now, the 3090 Ti, which I don't actually have on the table right here, it's actually on the wall behind me because that is no, it's not on the wall behind me, that's the Kingpin wall, I lied. The 3090 Ti, when it launched, was $2,000. Now yes, over time the price dropped, especially as the family lived on, and then the cryptocurrency crash, you know, the mining crash, and then Ethereum moving to proof of stake, so graphics cards no longer being mined on for Ethereum, and then just availability, new family of graphics cards coming, people waiting to see what they're gonna cost, not buying, led to a surplus of like 3090s and 3090 Ti's. Leading a 3090 Ti, like the Founders Edition card, to drop all the way down to $1,100 at Best Buy, or $1,099, making it an extraordinary value for anyone that was willing to spend $2,000 on that card at any period in time. We are now comparing an MSRP launch card of $799 or $849 in this instance, again, theoretically, because who knows what they're really going to be at the retailers, versus what was a $2,000 launch card, but was had for as low as $1,100 at the lowest. Sometimes just at 1,000, and you can find a 3080 Ti, which was only about 5% slower than a 3090, for under $1,000, which again is about 10 to 15% slower than a 3090 Ti. Because remember that 3090, or that 3080 Ti, 3090 Ti was only about a 12% gap between the 3080 and 3090 Ti, depending. So if we just do a quick price check right now, and I look at like, I don't know, let's look at Amazon. Founders Edition for $1,400. A Zotac Gaming 3090 Ti amp for $2,000. An MSI RTX 3090 Ti, the gaming, just a regular old one, $1,859. The EVGA 3090 Ti for the Win 3, the one we actually used in our test, $2,299. And now I'm seeing 3080 Ti's because that's all the 3090 Ti's that were up there. It's almost like if somebody had told you that the prices were gonna go back up. I don't know if anyone had been stupid enough to make a video saying pricing would probably go back up someday and it'd be a good idea to grab one of these cards. That guy's definitely an idiot. Let's go ahead and look over here. Newegg. Oh my God, pop-ups Newegg. What the, Jesus, they must really be hurting for money. The 3090 Ti 24 gig in stock, Founders Edition card, $1,799. The Gigabyte Gaming, $2,390. That is a marketplace sale, by the way. That means a third party is selling on Newegg, kind of like how third parties sell on Amazon. So these people have been smoking crack for the last 3 months. Zotac RTX 3090 Ti, $1,699. So this card, the 4070 Ti, in no dimension known to man, whether Rick and Morty or us or whatever, will ever sell for $800 or $850. Because if it is trading blows with the 3090 Ti, and the market has somehow determined that a 3090 Ti is worth $1,700, you already know what manufacturers, or not manufacturers, but retailers are gonna do to this card. Let's say hypothetically, because I still get emails from people saying I found a 3090 Ti for $1,200, is it worth it? If you're gonna spend $1,200, you can find a 4080 for $1,200, which I think we can. That's a no-brainer. The 4080 is not a good value unless you're already shopping at that price point. If you are shopping at that price point, which is not that many people, yeah, right here. RTX 4080, Gigabyte, $1,269. I would absolutely spend the extra 70 bucks on a 4080 versus a 3090 Ti, if you can find a 3090 Ti for $1,200, which you can't anymore. If this doesn't tell you just how stupid retailers are, that they are literally sitting on 3090 Ti's, and 3090s even, that are costing more than the new generation, which is faster, I can't follow this anymore. I'm so over this, and I know that you guys are too. So anyway, I got into a little bit of a tangent. If you're shopping in this price point, and you were even considering a 3090 Ti for $1,200, you'd be silly not to consider a 4070 Ti at $800 if you can find it, if you're not gaming primarily in 4K. Now 4K seemed to be the limiting factor between 3090 Ti performance and 4070 Ti performance, but I can tell you right now that NVIDIA was boasting up to 1.x performance over a 3090 Ti with a 4070 Ti, which is completely cherry-picked, because that is not what we saw at all. Yes, it has a newer, it's Ada Lovelace. It's the newest generation, it's a smaller process, it's faster. Clock speeds are up. However, it has 3,000 less CUDA cores than a 3090 Ti. It is more power efficient, which is a good thing given the 4090's terrible value in terms of efficiency. It's 12 gigabytes of GDDR6. It's fast. However, if you are gaming at 4K and you are playing games that have high texture packs, high texture resolution and stuff, that 12 gig gets chewed up very quickly, which is what brings it much closer to the performance of a 3090 Ti. However, it's still, comparative price-wise, the better value, even at 4K. I cannot in my mind imagine a situation where somebody would choose a 3090 Ti over a 4070 Ti at this point, or even a 4080, to tell you the truth. But the problem is, most people are not shopping for $1,000 plus graphics cards. And that's only if you can get a 4070 Ti for anywhere near its MSRP. Time will tell. 4080s are still readily available. I'm looking at a ton of them on Newegg. Pretty much every SKU is here at some point. Even the ones being sold, you know what's funny? I'm seeing third parties on here that are selling the 4080s for roughly their MSRPs. And they're the same companies trying to get stupid amounts for the 3090 Ti's. So I don't know how that makes sense. But I can tell you right now, the 4070 Ti, it's a step towards the right direction, but it's still the most expensive 70 series card we've ever seen in the history of 70 series cards. Remember, everything that we have seen launched in 40 series has been moved up an entire cost bracket. You can call it whatever you want. You can call it a 4090, you can call it a 4080, 4070 Ti, 4080 12 gig, it doesn't matter. Its pricing puts it in a whole bin higher than anything before. And that's why gamers are mad. That's why gamers are pissed. Now, compared to the 7900 XT and XTX, it also trades blows. However, what makes it a difficult sell is not only with everything coming to light about the vapor chamber problems on the reference card for AMD, it's the fact that I still see a lot of comments talking about the extra technology that you give up, DLSS 3.0, the newest RT cores, RT performance overall. Yes, FSR 2.1 or 2.0, 2.1 is out at a few titles. It's something that I still see people not willing to give up if the price point is the same. Now, it's $100 less than the 7900 XT, and it is performing a little bit less than a 7900 XT depending on the title. But the XT itself is already a weird SKU to exist so close to the XTX and only be, what is it, $200 or $100 less than an XTX? It's weird times. I really can't wait to see what happens when we get down into the 60 series cards, but if I had to make a prediction right now, if you're holding for those mid tiers, if a 4070 Ti can exist for $799, then a 4060 is probably gonna be in the 500s, which is just sad for everybody. If I sound really salty and over it, especially if you're an NVIDIA rep watching this going, why is he being so mean? I mean, maybe brands just feel the pandemic and the amount of people that were buying and scalping allowed them to meet their bottom line. They didn't care who the card was going to as long as they were being sold. I think they can just continue to wring out the industry for every dollar that it's worth. Now here's the other thing. We know for a fact that this was the attempted 4080 12 gig. We know that. If you compare the teraflop numbers, they're identical. That means everything about this card and its performance is exactly the same. They were able to reduce it by $100. Apparently they can reduce it by $100 and still make money. How high do you think the 4080 and the 4090 is above where they could be selling it? That's why people are mad, NVIDIA. All right, there you go. I don't know what other brands are gonna be. I mean, obviously all the flavors you're used to seeing are gonna be out there, but I think every review, as far as I can tell, is either gonna be a tough or a Strix, based on the information we got from NVIDIA about price points and stuff. I still think it's kind of slimy that they sent us the 850 model instead of the $800 model, because I would have much rather looked at that. That's probably just to try and make it look that much better. Anyway, there you go. If I sound a little just defeated in all of this, it's because, I mean, you guys want buying advice, and I can't give it to you. Like, the pricing is all over the place. Inflation is up, cost of living is up. People need to make their rent, people need to buy food, they need to make their car payments, their car insurance payments and stuff. And buying a graphics card right here, that is easily a couple of car payments and a car insurance note in 1 month, it's a hard sell. I don't know, sign off down below. Is $800 enough? Like, is that cheap enough for you to buy a 4070 Ti? Or are you just like, screw it, I'll hang on to whatever gen card you have for a little bit longer? If history has taught us anything, the next generation, which could still be 2 years away, obviously, might do like 30 series did versus 20 series, where 20 series was really expensive and then it came back down, theoretically, in 30 series, although that was like the height of the scalping era. We can hope for that with 5000 series, but it just honestly feels like, all feels like it's just money grabs at this point. Whatever. I love this stuff. I'm a nerd over this stuff. It makes me happy to play with it, but it's just sad to see what the industry's become.